Thank you very much for coming along to the Wee Dub Clinic. So, this is part of the Wee Dub Festival. Hopefully you've been enjoying yourselves for the last couple of days. There's another dance tonight, obviously down at the Caves. And my name's Vic Galloway. I broadcast for BBC Radio Scotland. I'm a massive reggae fan, have been for many, many years. I'm by no means an expert, but I've read some books, I've listened to records all my life, and watched many films and so on. So it was a real honour for Chris at the Wee Dub Festival to ask me to host this afternoon. Basically what I'm going to do is chat to my guests about the history of UK reggae, or reggae in the UK, and then I'll throw it open to you guys. So if you've got any questions, anything that I haven't covered, anything that you specifically want to ask, then store it up. I'll come to you towards the end of the session, stick your hand in the air, and shout your question out. So anything you want to know, but let me introduce you to my guests. A provider of conscious roots and dub for many, many years in the UK, from Channel One Soundsystem, Mikey Dread. Give it up, please. And the man to my immediate right is the main selector at Trojan Records. He's a DJ, a festival booker. He does podcasts, radio shows. He's basically a reggae enthusiast and nerd. Give it up for Earl Gateshead, ladies and gentlemen. Nerd in a good way, honey. We're going to take this right back to the beginning. The Windrush came from Jamaica and the West Indies, bringing black immigrants who came and settled in the UK, and they brought their music. Tell me a little bit about the first kind of reggae parties. It would be even before the term reggae was even coined, I would imagine. Blues parties. That's where people would have heard Jamaican music, perhaps for the first time in the UK. Mikey, do you ever get along to a blues party? Did you ever get along to anything that resembled something like that when you were a nipper?
Well, I always used to play at blues parties. Channel One, we came up from the old man. He taught us how to play a sound system. I used to know sound system since I was that big. Mm-hmm. And, we've always had parties at our house. Blues dances where it used to be, our mothers and fathers used to say, you have to stay upstairs because all the big people are downstairs, whatever. And we used to see boxes, the old man had boxes, and in the back room, in the front room, and the gram, and whatever, So it's always been there from as I say, since I know it.
And what was the sort of atmosphere like? What was the feeling like at these parties? Because they were initially quite secretive, and you had to keep the police away and so on.
Well, parties are parties. Like, anything. It's just that, if you turn up too loud, just like today, police is gonna come to your house, or the neighbor's gonna come and can you keep down the sound a little bit, please? And they say, but that was normal. And they say, so, blues dances, it went to parties, weddings, and then it came into showbeans, and they say, and blues dances. So that's how it really started evolving with reggae music, as I know it. And they say, so, it's always been there.
Can you remember any of the specific records from those early days? Any that jump out as you as particular favourites, or ones that you'd hear over and over?
One particular favourite I used to have is a tune called Live Injection from the Upsetters. And I used to know all them tunes. And so that tune used to be in my head all the time. In my head, I just used to be singing that tune all the time. And so these type of music, never die with you. They're always from your young. You go up with all this music, and then there's plenty of music on Gas label and Blues Blue Beat label, and all these tunes. Can't come to my head yet, but later on when I'm thinking, so all these
sure.
tunes come to
And
my
we
head.
can talk more about the actual building of a sound system later, because obviously you've had much sort of expertise and time doing that. Tell us a little bit about some of those records, Earl, because you're one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about that kind of era of reggae, I would imagine, and certainly reggae throughout the ages. Tell us a little bit about some of those early Jamaican records. It was almost the step between R&B, rhythm and blues, and kind of rock and roll that Jamaicans were hearing across the Waters on the radio, and then putting the emphasis on the offbeat, creating their own tunes. Those are the first records that people would have been hearing at blues parties here, right?
Yeah, well, Chris Blackwell, who did so much, he was the first one he licensed Jamaican records. I don't know if you know, but Duke Reid in Jamaica was called the Trojan. Yeah, Easy Dread? You alright? Yeah. Duke Reid was called the Trojan because he had 5 sound systems and he moved them about on a big old British Leyland lorry called the British Leyland Trojan, and it had a Trojan warrior on the front. So the Duke Reid got called the Trojan, and when Chris Blackwell started licensing off Duke Reid, the stuff Duke Reid was releasing in Jamaica, he called the label Trojan. So that's how it got the name. And they were the first. Chris Blackwell did a good job, and he got records in the charts actually. My Boy Lollipop being the one people remember, but he got a lot more in the charts. And from the start, really, there was a natural affinity between Jamaica. I think it's fair to say British people a lot of British people really liked reggae from the very start, from the very first records. Of course, there was a skinhead thing. The skinheads a bit maligned, really, because they're reggae lovers by and large. And
well, for example, at one of those blues parties, would it only be black people to begin with? Would it only be Jamaican people, or were more and more white people coming and enjoying the music as well? What was happening then?
Well, the early things in Notting Hill, I mean, you got to remember I was in Gateshead till 1976. We had very few blues parties. But obviously I read a lot, and I talk to a lot of people. In the Notting Hill, the sort of West London Notting Hill scene, there was a lot of, loads of white people basically. But when I went down to New Cross, I started going to Shabeen, and when I first moved to London in '76, I went to New Cross, and I went to Shabeen, and they were mainly black really, and I don't know, it varies from party to party, really. Every party different, every area in London different.
Well, growing up in the northeast, how did you discover reggae? What was your sort of, gateway into it?
I think for a lot of people it was ska. Got into ska really. It straight away. I remember a time before skinheads. I remember the very first skinheads, and I remember that we started the local dances where I was about 16. There's a ballroom in Newcastle called the Oxford, and everybody was everybody went there. We dressed up. We used to look like young Americans. We used to wear Levi's Stay Pressed, etc., and button-down collar shirts. And the music, play R&B music. And then the music ska music started coming in, and the look started to change. And I got to love ska music straight away. I loved it. It was a classy end of ska. Mm-hmm. And I loved it in Newcastle from that time. And the Trojan compilations called Tighten Up were a big thing for me. Obviously my experience with Mikey's is very different. So he comes out the heart of the culture. I come from white people who like reggae, which is a different sort of position, really. And Trojan compilations, the Tighten Up compilations, I used to get them all.
So you've now got your dream job then, in a way, like being, if you were buying those Trojan records when you were a teenager. Or
as they came out, yeah. I bet black people like them Tighten Up things as well. I don't know, in the 60s.
Yeah. We all had them in, we all had them in the, we call it the record boxes. Yeah. And our record boxes was like that big, not like the little 19-inch things that you're carrying around at the moment. Our record box is that big. And so we all had Tighten Up the albums, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever. So yeah, they're always all in there.
Well, how about buying records like that? Because you mentioned Chris Blackwell bringing them reggae to a bigger audience and so on. But when those first records were coming out of Jamaica and then on small UK labels, they were fairly tough to get hold of. Were there specific shops that you used to go to, or your folks used to go to, your friends used to go to in London to buy those records, Mikey? I mean, where did you get them?
Well, yeah, yes, you know, you always have to go to like record shops. You always have to go to Pacific shops to go and get, you know, the latest pre-release, whatever. Because you know, when you started first working now, and you know, my pay packet, first pay packet, before I go home to give, you know, some money to my mum, I'm down the record shop. You know, I want the first release to come out there, because what used to happen that when pre-release used to come from Jamaica to the record shop, they used to come in around 4 o'clock, 5 between 5 and 7, whatever. I used to be in there at the right in the middle, out of everybody, all the sound system guys buying records at the time, and you know that's where most of the pay packet went.
Yeah.
You see? So you know that's how music, as I said, stay with me. And you see, by the time I get home, my mum said, "Look, give me some money so I can put some away." And I've just got a packet of records in my head. And she said, "That's what you go and buy your money with, records?" I said, "Mum, this is me."
Yeah.
And this is so, you know, whatever happens next week, happens.
Yeah, yeah. Not much has changed, I don't reckon. Certainly not for
Not with me,
anyway.
no.
Yeah, large record collection and nothing else to show for it. But that's no bad thing. Yeah, I mean, people talk about like download culture and the whole digital age. People are making records and making tunes and firing them out on a day-to-day basis now. But it wasn't that different back then either. I mean, as far as I can tell, bands would go into studios, record a tune, they'd press it pretty much that day or by the end of the week, and then it'd be in the shops by the weekends. There were so many, like if you look at, obviously, Trojan, but also Palma International, and then all the different labels, Planetone, Melodisc, Blue Beat, we mentioned. I mean, there were tons and tons of labels, all putting out records almost on a weekly basis. So was it a question of just trying to keep up with the newest tunes?
Well, it always has been, really, yeah. I mean, you're right, there's an enormous amount of music pressed up in that period, a massive amount of music, particularly coming out of Jamaica. I mean, everybody in Jamaica must have been making records virtually, because there's just so much of it. Well,
I mean, I suppose we're talking about the history of reggae in the UK. Initially, it was all Jamaican records, as far as I can tell. I mean, it took a while for UK bands to start making, and producers and so on, to start making their own records. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the first few British-made reggae records?
Yeah, I've got loads of respect for Dennis Bavell. What do you reckon? Matumbi. Matumbi made real quality reggae very early. Dennis Bavell made fantastic reggae music. I mean, he must start about 79 or something.
That's right.
I don't know if you know Dennis Bavell.
Blackbeard, indeed, yeah.
Blackbeard, yeah, of course. He's dub stuffs. Everything he does is fantastic. His dub stuff's fantastic. But he made sort of pop reggae. What was his big hit?
Janet Kaye's Silly Games he produced and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Silly Games was big, yeah.
And he did all the backing music to Linton Kwesi Johnson's albums. I think LKJ's like a massive thing in UK reggae as well. But even predating Dennis Bavell, you've got like the Rudies, the Cimarrons, all of these bands, which were basically like UK reggae bands, like guys that learned how to play reggae by copying the records and so on, and then would back up the touring Jamaican stars. So the first UK reggae was actually sort of like, you know, British guys backing up their heroes, which they couldn't believe. I mean, how important, you talked about ska, how important was Prince Buster in the whole thing? Because he had his own label and everything. And he was one of the first stars to come over and actually tour and bring people to life. Do you remember Mikey, do you remember any of the original Jamaican guys coming over and touring? Did you ever get a chance to see any of those guys like perform live?
Well, Bob Marley.
Oh, you did?
Went to see Bob Marley. You see a lot of people talk about Bob Marley, but you have to go and see him live. When you go and see Bob Marley live, then that's a different thing than Bob Marley on record. Mm-hmm. And this is so Bob Marley and the Wailers. You know, Family Man Barrett, all these guys who was in the band touring at the time, you know, the eye trees. But then, you know, when you get to see them live, it's a different kettle of fish than just listen to them on record. And but you know, the amount of music what was coming out, as I said, from just Bob Marley alone, and all the albums that he did, and with the Wheelers, you know, was second to none, really.
Mm. Yeah. Well, sadly, I never had the opportunity to see Bob Marley, but I've tried as often as possible to see sort of my heroes from Jamaica, Toots Hibbert, Prince Buster, I mentioned, Jimmy Cliff. But, you know, going back to the UK side of things again, if these guys were coming over, they needed backing bands, and the UK backed them up. So it was the Rudies, the Simmerans, as I say, Greyhound, all of these original bands. But then UK reggae started developing its own sort of identity. Can you talk a bit, Earl, about that transition from like ska into rock steady, and then from that whole time into roots and dub? Because suddenly the music took a far more sort of conscious direction, and things changed. How did the audience change? Because it went from skinheads and party goers and so on.
Music always reflects the way the world changes. We all know that. As the world changes, the music changes. And it went from, I mean, basically the whole world became more optimistic and more spiritual. Or the music everywhere became more spiritual through the 70s, and reggae went the same way. And also it slowed down a lot because the instruments became electric. And when the thing is, with ska music, a lot of it was played on a acoustic bass. So the bass, you know, if you listen, it's dung 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 dung. When you got electric bass, you can make a bass note really last a lot longer. Dung. You can do that on a electric bass, and as the music became more electric, it slowed down to show off the quality of the instruments and the bass. But yeah, roots music. I mean, the Rasta movement, really, which I can't really talk about with, the Rasta music was a spiritual movement. Most of the musicians had previously been rude boys, became Rasta men, and wanted to play in a spiritual way. And roots music developed because of that, really. And the Rasta man looked back to Africa, and that way, yeah, the music it became roots music, and you know, that's the music I still like best. I think it's really for the best music that ever came out of Jamaica for me is that early roots music. Roots music around about '84, before the drum machine, and there's tons and tons and tons of it, and it has a spiritual quality that makes it timeless, and it talks about the most important things, you know. People, and we've all seen the world has become more and more material, more and more commercial. People deny the spirituality, and the spirituality is defiant in roots music, and it's there, and its importance is recognised, and that's why the music is timeless for me, anyway.
To answer part of your question about the early bands of the UK reggae roots. You said, you know, them times when Jamaican artists used to come over to England to perform, that's when they start using bands like Oswald, Reggae Regulars, Tradition, Capital Letters, Mindlink, Simmons, you know, all these type of bands, what was around Misty Roots, and you know, all these bands what was around at the time was making huge waves with Jamaican artists, because it was a little bit expensive to bring Jamaican musicians over to England. So that's how we started getting into a lot of Jamaican artists coming to use the British bands, and then realizing they're just as good as some of the Jamaican musicians. And you know, so when you get all these bands coming up, and you know, you used to play, you're getting clubs where you can play like 100 Club, you know, things like that in Oxford Street. You know, these long-time Club Norwich, all these bands used to perform at all these clubs, and that's where the artists used to come over and perform at all those clubs there. There's, you know, famous clubs.
And that must have given like the UK bands like real confidence.
A lift.
As well.
That's
yeah,
right.
Because it's like you guys are as good, if not better, than the band I'm playing with back home. So,
well, yeah,
you know,
sometimes they used to say that because, you know, we used, you know, don't forget a lot of the pre-release music really used to sell here first. before it's really set in Jamaica, because they used to export them. A lot of music used to be export to the sound systems here, and then, so when the sound systems pick them up. But then before, to answer another one of your questions, before when people said there's a lot of music been coming out, don't forget a lot of music didn't come out, but was only played by certain sound systems on dub. And you see, so you have those dubs for about 6 months to a year, and to feature on different sound systems before they actually came out on the street.
So this is the concept of the dub plate, so that it would be, you'd get the dub plate of a particular release. Only your sound would be allowed to play it for 6 months, you say?
That's right.
That's pretty impressive. So if you want to hear that record or that collection of specific records, you have to go and see that sound system.
That sound system, years ago I used to, if you wanted to go and hear a tune, and it was only played by Sir Coxsone, and you have to go to Coxsone Dance to hear that particular tune. That's how it works.
Yeah, well, before we sort of move into like the actual British back stuff, which we just sort of touched upon, just going back to that transition between the Rude Boys and the party music and the ska and the rock steady, moving into roots. Do you remember that time, that transition, and do you remember yourself becoming more conscious and more aware of your own spirituality and the music slowing down and changing? Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it's like as Earl says, the music changes like how the world changes. And this is so, and different sound. I go to a different sound system, because it was, I used to go to hear bands, but in my culture it was more sound system thing. And this is so, when you go hear different sound systems, they play different music too, and you hear the lyrics in the music fit what's going on, because writers used to always tell you what's going on in the world, whether it's in their own backyard or into another country or in Africa or whatever. And that's how we used to get, and that's how you used to get the information as well, through music. And so it never used to get through certain things what happened in Africa. You never used to get it through, the Scottish Daily Mail.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't get much in the Scottish Daily Mail.
Things like that. You used to get it through music.
Yeah.
And so that's how we as a youth used to learn. And then, we used to never used to go to school, and they used to tell us about all these things what's happening in Africa and different parts of the world. And then we used to happen through music, and that's how we got our teachings.
Yeah, for me as well, you have to remember the context, because when I really got into roots, I think when I look back, I think if you think of the context, it was when Mrs. Thatcher had started becoming she was Prime Minister, and I was philosophically opposed to Mrs. Thatcher and her point of view in life. It was really shocking for me that somebody could be so material and so dismissive of community, and and her point of view became more and more the norm, and it made me personally, and I think a lot of other people, feel like an outsider, because I disliked her point of view, and her point of view became more and more the norm. And that sucked me into Roots, because Roots had the point of view that I believed in, and it was a sucker for me and strength in those times.
Well, I discovered reggae through punk music. That was my gateway, my opening. The Clash mainly, but also the Ruts, Stiff Little Fingers, various different bands, and Two Tone, obviously. I was buying Madness and Specials records before I knew what reggae was particularly. But that was my gateway. That was the way into it. Maybe talk a little bit, it's basically off the back of what you just said, the relationship between punk and reggae was really crucial, and I think it spread the music to a whole new audience, people like myself, for example, but all sorts of other people.
Reggae's not particularly easy to find a way into. It might have been for Mikey, but for most white people, it's quite hard to get into reggae, because it's a whole world. It's not, you can't just walk into it. It's difficult to find your way in. And people still come in through various doors. Bob Marley was the biggest door, of course. But yeah, punk was another door, because the punks were rebels and outsiders. And the whole essence of reggae music is rebel and outsider. So the links are obviously there. The music was massively different, obviously, but the worldview was the same. And I think once the punk people recognised that the reggae people had the same world view as them, outsider world view, outsider, not an insider. Then, you know, people on the fringes, people not accepting of what the current philosophy is. Outsider people recognised immediately. Well, it's slowly recognised that, but people come in nowadays. I talk to young kids, and a lot of them come in through jungle. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody's got a route in that they start off, they listen to drum and bass and jungle or dubstep, and then they hear the samples, and then slowly they understand reggae that way. But like as I say, reggae is not easy to work your way into. It's a whole world, and you know, it's a whole philosophy, and you've got to understand the background of the music before you feel the music, really.
Well, something that Mikey touched upon, which I'm kind of interested in as well, is that you mentioned there's going to see bands, and you know, whether it be if you're lucky enough to see Bob Marley and the Wailers, but also the UK bands that were starting to appear, Aswad, Steel Pulse, even, let's give them their dues, UB40, you know, they may have become a little cheesier in their later days, but the first album's absolutely brilliant, you know, and you know, it was starting to cross over. There were more and more people, black and white, getting into it. But the difference between going to see live bands and going to a sound system, because you've got your blues parties, which maybe that will be the roots of sound system culture in a way, but tell us about sound system culture and how it began in the UK, because the main players are, to begin with anyway, Jah Shaka, Fat Man, Saxon. We're talking about these sounds.
Sounds before that.
No, there's a lot of sound systems before these guys.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about them.
You know, you used to get you get sound systems like Count Shelley,
Count Shelley and Lloyd Coxon and
Duke Vin, and Duke Reed. You know, all these. There's a Neville the Enchanter, and all these sound systems what used to be around in the '60s.
Yeah.
And they say that they're the ones that really start off. You know, Metrodome beat. And all these sound systems what start off. You know, Fat Man. Yeah. And all these sound systems started off with what made sound system, you know, today, and it's happening and still happening.
And so, why did you prefer going to a sound system dance than going to see a live band? What attracted you to that?
What attracted me to sound system first, because I said I used to see the old man playing sound system all the while, and this is fascinating. What you used to play with valve amplifiers. And these are when you see a valve glowing in the night, and you hear this sound of these valve amplifiers, stacked up, and these are what interests me. Plus the boxes, what we used to have at the time, and boxes all around the venue, and these are things what fascinate them. And the music, when you listen to music, whether it's blue beat, whatever, sound system, them call it nowadays bass culture. But when you talk about we used to call it weight. And they say, because when you hear a sound and you say, well, that sound have a whole lot of weight, and that's the terms what we're talking about, them time now, and we're talking about bass line. And when you hear bass of sound systems, them times, it's a totally different thing to a sound system of today.
Yeah, a thing I liked about them, I remember from the start, I loved sound system from I heard the first one I ever heard. I loved them instantly. But what I noticed was the difference between the attitude of the people listening. If you go and see a band, by and large, they're on a stage with beautiful lights on them, and the position of the audience seems to be that you have to learn or worship these wonderful people on stage and listen to them, and they're sort of marvelous, and you're just the audience. And there's a big sort of difference. But in a sound system, it's a more part of the community. Everybody's the same. There's a sort of equality. People will respect a good mic man, etc. But there's nobody's worshiping anybody. And a lot of people in the audience will fancy themselves on the mic anyway. So it's a very different thing. It's almost like you're providing your own entertainment. And it's not this commercially produced thing that bands have become. obviously they sell themselves very hard, and you're supposed to be an inferior person in some ways to the person on stage. It's hard to put your finger right on it.
But then you could say the same about DJ culture now, with these Charlies like, what do you call it, David Guetta and all these Satanists. I mean, that's the exact opposite of the kind of anonymous DJ. So, things can go wrong in any sort of culture. But, I mean, in a way, like, sound system culture, it gave birth to hip hop and the kind of maybe the kind of DJ culture that I just talked about in a bad way, but also in a good way. What was the first sound that you went to? Can you remember where it was?
Well,
or who
weirdly,
it was?
in Bradford. Bradford got really good. Bradford and Huddersfield got fantastic sound systems very early. Some of the first sound systems in Britain were in Yorkshire. And I saw one in Bradford. I was just absolutely knocked out and loved it. Can't remember their name now.
Can you remember sort of what time and what kind of tunes they were playing and that sort of thing?
Well, playing heavy roots, and I remember some of their tunes. They're playing really heavy roots, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. I can't remember which one.
Okay, Mikey, tell us a bit about actually starting your own sound system, building the boxes, looking for the gear. I want you to go into a bit of detail about what it takes to actually, be a sound system.
Well, what it takes to be a sound system is one, dedication, and it's not, and you can't, like some people are nowadays thinking that you can build a sound system overnight. You can't build a sound system overnight. And it takes me way back to school, way back to school when I used to be in the woodwork class, where everybody's building tables and whatever. I'm building boxes. And that's the difference when you what you have in your head, because you know exactly what you excuse me, you know exactly what you want. And because I said I see the old man do it, this is how I grew. And building parts of sound system in the woodwork class and taking it home and finishing it in the cellar. And we were downstairs in the cellar. Sometimes all these Saturdays. Sometimes my mom never know where I was. Nobody knew where I was, but I was downstairs in the cellar. And then sometimes the only time they knew is when I was finishing a box and I'm painting it. They say smell the paint coming upstairs. They say, oh, Mikey's downstairs finishing off boxes. Mm-hmm. And they say, so that's when I was, 13, 14. And they say, so this is how things evolve. So with that now, you got the sound system up, start building boxes and boxes, and starting buying, getting amplifiers from friends, families, or whatever. The big brother had a little sound system, so they take this and we build it as we're going along. What it was, as I talked about, going back to the community thing, what Earl was saying, in our community, in school, in the school, used to have, say, when a lot of people have support football teams. You could have people that have 5, 6, half a dozen football teams in a one class. In that one class, we could have 4 or 5 sound systems, and around that community. And we used to have to do it down the community centre, whatever. One Tuesday night would be me and another sound from the class, and then Wednesday night would be another sound and another sound from the same class. And so all around that section used to be our pure sound systems. We used to have 4 18s or something like that, or 6 18s or whatever. And we used to build the sound systems together. And we sometimes used to say, well, I'm going down to the record shop to buy this tune or that tune. And sometimes we used to hide because I know he's going down to the record shop to buy that tune. So I'm going to go to another record shop to see if I can get another tune. Same thing. And so that's how we used to do it, sound system at the time. So, it was a fun thing at the same time, but it was a serious thing. And so that's how sound system evolved. And so if you're getting 6 sound systems in a community, just around, say, Edinburgh, you could imagine the whole of Scotland having, talking about the 30 sound systems. And this is how sound systems grew. And it's just something where as I say, you start playing at the weddings and receptions and things like that, until you start branching out. You start branching out into clubs, dances, And that's how things came up with sound system.
Sure. Does one person in the gang have to become an expert electrician? Because I'm always thinking, like, if I started a sound system with someone, I'd be electrocuted within the first few months of trying it.
Yeah,
so everyone becomes like a specialist in some area.
Yeah, you just get it's like you just get the knowledge of how to wire up your sound system. And then you look on other people, you look on bigger sounds like you, and you go and watch, and you just get the knowledge of people, sound system, or you get somebody who can build, boxes and what, and we all come together. So sometimes it used to be like half a dozen of us, and that's how we came together.
You have to be in a team, I think.
Yeah, and what about technology? How has that helped the sound system culture? Is it just more volume, more bass? Or what is it a help or a hindrance? You sort of look back at the early days and think, it was better back then, or do you think things are as good now in terms of building a sound system and taking it around?
Well, them times that you used to have an operator, and you used to have selectors, and they say operator and selectors are two different things. They have their role to play. So when the sound system is playing, you have a selector who's selecting tunes. And they say, nowadays it comes down to, what it is now, that sound system is diminished a little bit in the 80s and the 90s. And then what you did which is again, going back to where the dedication is. And where I took it on now is it became the selector and the operator. And they say, I built a team around me with my brother, with Caleb coming in, whatever, and then we just did what we had to do. And they say, Caleb is the mic man, I'm selector and the operator, whatever, and we just work it that way. So everybody knows what role to play. My other brother, he drives the trucks, and I don't drive the truck, he drives the trucks. And I can drive the truck, but I said I'd rather him drive the truck. Okay. And they say, so that's how we work it. So everybody's got a role to play, and that's how we do business.
Now, yourself, Earl, with sound systems, you've been involved now for a few decades of selecting tunes and so on. How have you seen things change since when you first started DJing reggae records?
Well, like I say, you've got to remember the context all the time. It's sort of, when I started, a lot of people, I'm a white person, obviously, a lot of people in the white world had no regard for reggae at all. Really disliked it. The whole of the media completely ignored it. You'd never get a reggae record reviewed anywhere in any of the newspapers. You'd never ever hear a reggae record on the radio. People would laugh and joke about reggae being, people had no respect and regard for it. Gradually, there's been an acceptance that reggae has merit. That's what I noticed. You never used to see, the second-hand reggae shops didn't even have a reggae section. You can only go to Jamaican shops to buy reggae. All the British, the UK second-hand, they didn't even carry reggae. There was so little regard for it. And that, I think there's generally been an increase in respect and regard for reggae and acceptance that it has quality and it's serious music at its best. That's the biggest thing I see. That people don't remember how little regard there was from reggae for the outside world.
Mm-hmm. Well, go back to the music a little bit, and then I'm going to sort of wind it up and sort of throw to you guys if anyone's got a question. Start storing it up and having a thought, and I'll come to you in a minute. But you mentioned Dennis Bovell, and he helped reggae cross over, I think, in the UK quite a lot. Not only for being in Matumbi and playing excellent music himself, but he also ended up producing bands as well. He produced The Slits, Orange Juice, all sorts of different people that you wouldn't necessarily expect. He might be the man responsible for Lovers Rock as well, which is a uniquely British thing as well. Tell us a little bit about Lovers Rock, if you could.
I don't know what to say, really.
Is it something that you like, or I
don't like it. No.
Mikey, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, Lovers Rock is not my thing.
You gotta try these things, right?
Lovers Rock.
Lovers Rock is sweet, okay? It's love songs. It's the sweetest of the sweet.
Lovers Rock is alright if you want to carry your lady out one night and whatever, and smooch you up one night and whatever. But after that, no.
But you know, for example, right? If you've got lovers, like if you've got a sound system or a DJ selector playing Lovers Rock, right? Your audience is going to be quite different, I would imagine, from like a heavyweight sort of roots.
Yeah.
Dark, dubby roots kind of vibe.
In London now, in Jamaica, they call it big people music. Because
Right.
the older generation quite like it.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. But I mean, it is specifically. It may be global now, but it was something that came from the UK. If the UK invented any kind of part of reggae, it's Lovers Rock, right?
I don't know. I think that the British sounds were different to the Jamaican sounds, and I think we should be proud of that. Actually, we went another way with the sound systems. We took the sound systems our own way, and I think I'd be more proud of that. Actually.
Well, we don't want to diss Lovers Rock too much, right? What is the difference between a Jamaican sound and a UK sound in terms of the systems and so on? When you, Mikey, Earl's just sort of scratched up on it there. Would you want to sort of tell us a little bit more?
No, don't get me wrong. You have Jamaican Lovers Rock, which I think me personally can more identify, because when you play people like Dennis Brown and Gregory Isaac, and then, these type of guys, Leroy Smart, and then, they were playing a particular type of Lovers Rock. And to me, the UK Lovers Rock is a bit too softy.
Okay.
And so, but when you're getting nice music from Jamaica, lovers, tune from Jamaica, it's got a meaning, more of a meaning, and and sometimes the music behind it could be a slow, hard, tough music that what you can smooch it to your woman with.
Right. Okay.
And about the sounds, I mean, when you got like Saxon and Coxon in particular, what they did was they stopped imitating Jamaican sounds really, and they got British MCs and British singers singing in a sort of British way about British things.
That's exactly where I was taking it next,
Yeah.
Earl. You can sense where I'm going with this.
And I think we should be proud of that, the way that they developed sound system in a British way.
So you had like some of the fast chatting style was obviously quite a British thing as well. Tipper Irie, Smiley Culture, and so on and so on.
Yeah, a lot of people there. Saxon wasn't really such. I mean, Saxon was famous because of its MCs and singers, because it had fantastic performers, and I think we should be proud that we brought through so many of these amazing performers, British performers, through the sound systems.
Mm-hmm. What about the period when reggae started getting slack? I mean, if we're talking about lovers and so on, you got maybe the opposite of Lovers Rock in a way, but still about smooching in a different way. Slack reggae seems to be something that some people just completely avoid. They either love it and they go right into it, or they avoid it. Can you sort of describe what slack reggae is and what you think of it and so on, Earl?
I don't know. It was big in the 80s, and I don't know what to say really. I mean, obviously I didn't like it, but it's still big in America. I think it depends on your.
Well, what was the impact of it on reggae in general and on UK reggae? And I mean, you've got slackness, but you've also got the hard-hitting ragga and sort of dancehall style coming in the 80s.
The slackness thing. What was happening? Where when the people, what you say, slackness music and certain dancehall and bashment music, well, it was having an impact on the youths. Mm-hmm. The youths started going a different way. And they started to become, how can I say, more rude, more disrespect of their elders, and that's what was happening. And that's how and this is what came back to what music can do to the world. Music can change the world, and so when you're getting certain music, what's coming out of producers was giving a slackness talk and a disrespectful talk of women and nature and whatever, the youth start pick that up. And that's how they feel that they can carry on. Mm-hmm. They feel that they can carry on that way. So everything is not. They want everything like now. They don't want to drive like we started off with a little Mini. They want the top car like now. So this is the way things start to evolve with the youth, because everything must be on the plate now. What we try to, with the roots music now, we try to show them that's not how it went. That's not how it is. And you have to build yourself. And when you come into sound system, and I used to go listen to sound system like it's a Shotgun, Fat Man, and whatever. It was like an apprenticeship thing. We used to get taught how to play a sound system, lift boxes, wire up cables, wire up, all these things is how to do about sound system, and them type of things that you learn throughout years and years. Not just tonight you can lift up a box and you know everything about sound system, and that's not the way it's all about, and that's where a lot of sound systems went wrong, and that is why in the 90s a lot of sound systems went downhill, because they thought they could do it all at once. And when I started back in 83, 84, I hope Channel One Soundsystem was responsible for bringing music to certain places in like the university circuit. Nobody in sound system was playing the university circuit like Channel One, and that's when I started playing with Madness, The Beat, Selectors, Specials, Bust the Blood Vessel. All these guys I was starting to do it there. They were performing, and Channel One Soundsystem was on the floor performing roots rock reggae music, and that is how the migration came within the university circuit. Our students' union used to know what Channel One is all about, coming to play at the polytechnics and things like that. So that's how I think we had a part of bringing music together in the UK scene to where white people is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it really did. It brought, black and white together, and whether it be the two-tone bands or the punk bands embracing reggae, or the reggae musicians and sound systems embracing the white bands, it was crucial. So, talking about that sort of raga dancehall slackness thing again, that was a blip. Do you think people there's a bit of a roots revival now, and that people are sort of going, we've had enough of that, we want to go back to the more sort of conscious style, because that's the feeling I seem to get from reggae today.
There's been slackness hasn't never really worked in Europe. It worked in America, but it never worked in Europe anyway. It's got a sort of mindset that's quite offensive to European people. And I think that in general, Europe sort of stayed with the roots and dub thing more than, America went right, and Jamaica went into bashment, but I don't think Europe did as much. And there's been a sort of dislocation between a European version of reggae and the Jamaican version of reggae over the last 10 years, because we're very different places with very different worldviews. They look to America and Jamaica, I think, a bit, and we don't really look to America as much, and so that the music has become dislocated. We have become dislocated from the motherland, Jamaica, really, musically, but I think that might be changing. Hopefully they're making music that European people can identify with more in Jamaica, and hopefully we can raise, because we need the connection, really.
Yeah, well, I've never been to Jamaica. I would love to go one day, but I do get the impression that musically, if I went over there looking for roots or even ska, rock steady, dub, whatever, I'm not going to find that. I'm probably going to find some really aggressive, in-your-face, ragamuffin, kind of slack sort of, I don't know if I'm going to get that or not. Is that still happening in Jamaica? Is that still popular?
I think it's changing now with certain things is going on. It is changing now. So because obviously the connection on like the World Wide Web now, YouTube and things like that, they see what we're doing over here, on this side of the Atlantic now, and they want to do the same thing now in Jamaica. They see that when you go to a Channel One dance, when you go to a Shaka dance, a Shanti dance, they see all different cultures in the one dance, and that's what they're picking up in Jamaica now. It's not just about black people. It's just not about white people. It's about all different type of people.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. So UK and Europe is actually sort of leading the way in some ways in terms of like good quality conscious reggae.
I think a lot. I don't know. everybody's got their own opinion. I mean, there's these people, Chronics and Protege, and a load of people following them who are now making a version of Roots. I don't know, hopefully there'll be some great music comes from those people. And we can all look at Jamaica we should be looking at Jamaica all the time. We're not really, though. I mean, really, most of the people who are playing around Europe, there's not much link to Jamaica, really.
Well, reggae's like such a melting pot of different styles, from your blue beat and pre-ska, ska, rocksteady, roots, dub, bashman, slackness, whatever, all the way through. Digital reggae is now such a massive thing. And I think maybe digital reggae got a bad rap to begin with. People didn't seem to sort of connect with it. I think, Jamaican people did, but I don't think, it crossed over as much. But I think that's changing now as well. There's a lot more sort of digital sounds out there that are, full of amazing MCs, amazing bass lines, amazing tunes, and conscious lyrics. Would you agree? Digital?
Yeah, I like the new digital stuff. I think it's great stuff. Great digital stuff they make currently. It's the stuff I like at the moment, definitely. What you got reggae with a big bass line, that, a big bass line. It's sort of got a European bass line that comes from drum and bass and dubstep, but you got a digital rhythm on it, basically an African rhythm. So, and then you got a song on top of that a lot of the time. So that's I'm feeling it. Yeah.
And how do you feel, Mikey, about like drum and bass and dubstep and these new sort of like more recent forms of music that obviously tap into reggae? Earl was mentioning earlier on. Are you a fan of that sort of stuff?
No.
I wasn't expecting you to say that, actually. I was expecting you to... No, you don't like it. Why not?
Drum and bass, dubstep, no. You see, these type of music just come to try. my personal opinion,
right?
They come and try to take over reggae music. That's what's happened to these type of music. They try and come and take over music, and they're not strong enough. You see, they think they can take over again, which is what I keep on saying. The race is not for the swift. They try to take over reggae music. Take dubstep, for instance. It came. You hear dubstep now? Dubstep was around for a couple of years, but then try if that. You see, but dubstep was around for a couple of years, and they tried to take over reggae music. They tried to put it in place of reggae music. So when they come into the festival, the Boomtown, the Outlook Festival and whatever, and they hear our type of music, the original type of music, push that through the door.
So I have noticed that. Okay, all right, we're running out of time. We're kind of, as you can imagine, we're going through the history of reggae in the UK in an hour. It's almost impossible. I've been doing my best to sort of lead from the early days to the present day. Time to throw over to you guys. Has anyone got a question for our experts on the stage? Please stick your hand up if you do. Anyone? Naz, you must. No. Chris?
When tonight?
When, where, or where? Do you know where you're playing?
I don't know, man.
I know, we're playing at the Caves. I've never been there, but I've been told they're a very nice venue, and we're going to get a good sound from big tours. Yeah.
Okay. Apart from where are you playing tonight? Yes.
My question relates to what Earl was saying about the unrecognition of reggae music in record shops. I was just wondering if there were specific catalysts when that changed, and if so, what was it?
So, reggae, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did.
Did everyone hear that question?
Yeah. Well, I used to troll the second-hand shops, obviously. The first, I can name shops. Obviously, I'm a bit London biased because that's the way I went by shops. But I got to give Soul Jazz respect, actually. They never had a second-hand reggae section. Then all of a sudden, I was shocked when I walked in there and I saw they had a second. That was about 15 years ago. They had a second-hand reggae section appeared. And then Reckless. As I say, they didn't think the music had enough value. They didn't think the music had enough quality. They were outside it. They didn't really understand it. and they gradually came into it through people like Mikey, and I've got to say people like myself, because I was playing to a lot of white people too. I had my own sound, and gradually they accepted its quality. But soul jazz, I think, those soul jazz compilations actually were very, very influential. They were the first compilations that crossed over. They were a good route in for a lot of people, those soul jazz. And then later, the Trojan box sets, I think they brought a lot of people in too. And people sort of, those box sets were only about a £5 for 3 CDs. And they brought a lot of people in. And people were willing to pay a £5 to get, and they were very sort of high standard. But before the box sets was the soul jazz compilations, which were massive sellers. And I think they gave people, they were quite influential, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. And as you mentioned, those Trojan boxes, if you haven't already, I'm sure you've got them all. I've got like an entire shelf of them. They're essential. But I think from my own personal perspective, in terms of being a nerdy record shopper, it really all depends on the shop. I found a place in Somerset. I was down there for a wedding a few months ago, and I found a random little independent shop, and it had an enormous reggae section, like the size of a kind of wing of a record shop, and it was just completely random. This guy did record fairs. He was a big fan himself. I think you just need to sort of shop around. In terms of the major record shops, I mean, do they even exist?
Never get reggae in the major record shops ever. You never used to. You get it a bit now, but even so, you don't really get it now, really, that much.
Yeah. I hope, does that go anywhere near to sort of? Yeah, was there a time when you so it was
Yeah,
that
noticed
those?
the change. I absolutely noticed the change. It was about 94, 95. People began to give reggae respect. It never got respect before that. It was totally outside.
Any more questions, please? There must be a few. Yes, man in the hat.
Could you talk a little bit about the whole CD versus vinyl debate?
CD versus vinyl, and digital as well.
Well, generally the importance of playing records for sound system culture and tradition.
Okay, how important is it to play vinyl over CDs or MP3s or anything?
Vinyl over CD is the sound quality you will get from a vinyl is very warm, very round. The sound from a CD on a sound system is more punchy, more direct. Whatever you can turn it up to, you can turn it up to the cows come home, and but you cannot do that with a needle. With a needle, you can only go at a certain level, but on a certain level, you can get that nice round, warm feeling, which you get on the needle with a record. But with a CD, is more just direct impact, whatever, and a lot of noise.
And what do most sound systems use nowadays then?
Well, most of them use CDs, but it's about distortion, really. Distortion's important in reggae music. It's distortion the distortion in the sound that produces the warmth. Vinyl distorts in a nice way, and CDs don't really, in digital sounds generally, don't distort that much out. They do distort. You can't just, I say the word distortion, I don't know if you want, the sort of warmth that Mikey's talking about, the warmth that I like, distortion is important in reggae. It's part of the sound, part of it for me. That's why I like vinyl.
The difference between that, as I say, is you have a digital sound and you get an analog sound. And then the analog is more warm to the ears, and the digital sound is more noise to the ears.
Is there a snobbery, like, for example, like Northern Soul? People will come over and try and check the DJ and see if he's got a first pressing. Like, if it's not a first pressing on 7-inch, then it's not, They're very snobbish about what records the DJ is playing. Is there a kind of snobbery in sound system culture about whether you're playing the vinyl over the CD, over the digital? Do people care?
Well, I don't think people care as much. What you need to have is good quality reggae music. And they say, and I don't think people, the only people who really care about either what you're playing, if you're playing it on dub or whatever, is mainly sound system people. And they say that's who really, that's really who looks at what you're playing.
I'm a snob. Yeah, I do care. And,
What format do you have then?
Well, I honestly believe that music is magic, and the first press has the most magic in it, and all other presses have slightly less magic.
Is that true? You really think?
No, I really believe
And so
that.
it's first pressing of vinyl. That's what you want.
Yeah, because that's got the most magic in it. Because it's the magic that was in the studio that day is more likely to be captured on the first press. The magic that they made when they were making the music, the magic they had. All subsequent presses have slightly less magic.
Okay, there you go. Well, any other questions? I think we got time for one more question. Yes.
Who are your favourite dub producers from England and not from Jamaica?
Okay, your favourite producers from the UK, not
Dub music.
dub.
Dub music from the UK. You have guys like Gossipy, very good. Disciples, very good. Contra Sounds, they're very good. These are guys who's been, and again, these are guys who's been, those three in particular, I've mentioned, they've been around sound system a long time. And so they're not just some fly-by-night producer who's come and put into music and whatever. They've been around sound systems for a long time. Come and listen to sound systems like Channel One, Shaka Cox, and all these sound systems. So they've built up the sound what they have to emulate with the sound system, to go with the sound system. So this is how them three sound producers are very good when it comes to making music.
And we managed to get through this entire conversation without mentioning Mad Professor either. So, but respect to him as well. He's very important. A lot of people got into reggae through Mad Professor, I think.
There will be a tour with Channel One meets Mad Professor in October.
There you go. We planned that, didn't we? Right. Please, give it up for my guests, my esteemed guests, Mikey Dread from Channel One Soundsystem, and Earl Gateshead. Please, Edinburgh. Thank you very much to the We Dub Festival for putting this on. My name's Vic Galloway. Thank you all for coming down. Enjoy tonight's show. It'll be amazing, the dance down at the Caves. And as I say, thank you very much for coming along. I know you've probably got busy Sunday afternoons, but it's great to see you all. Please, once again, give it up for my guests. Cheers, folks.